our banners and salute our selfless leaders who gave their all so that South Africa could be free. Thus, we commemorate the lives of comrades, President Oliver Tambo, the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party, and NEC member, Comrade Chris Hani, and the young lion, Comrade Solomon Kalushi Mahlangu. During the same month, we also gained our freedom from apartheid colonialism, from institutionalized racism and oppression. We began to build a new society free of hatred and vengeance. We began to build a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and prosperous South Africa. In April, we therefore celebrate as well as take stock of the long, arduous road traveled from the racist South Africa that excluded the majority to the new society we are building of justice, human rights, and freedom. Compatriots, we have gathered here today in particular to commemorate and celebrate the life of one of the leading personalities and leaders of the ANC and the SACP, Comrade Chris Hani. As you all know, the life of Comrade Chris was brutally brought to an abrupt end exactly 20 years ago today. Today, we commemorate that vibrant life that was taken away too soon. We commemorate a life lived in struggle. Like many revolutionaries, Comrade Chris grew up as a child under harsh conditions of poverty engineered by the apartheid regime to ensure that black people amount to nothing more than a source of cheap labor. It was also during his childhood that the apartheid regime introduced Bantu education in order to further its heinous aims of entrenching subservience mentality in the minds of black children. At that time, the regime had also made illegal any political activity at African schools in order to suppress any form of resistance to its racist policies. Despite and in spite of these odds, Comrade Chris went on to join the ANC Youth League at the tender age of 15 years. It was at this stage that he developed an unquenchable thirst for freedom, justice, and equality. In the following years, due to his unparalleled commitment to the struggle. He was to become one of the finest organic intellectuals in the service of the people of South Africa. When he went to the University of Fort Hare, he learned and embraced Marxism. He understood the intersection of the class and national struggles, and therefore the relationship between the African National Congress and the South African Communist Party. He became a Marxist-Leninist who adopted a scientific approach to struggle. This understanding led him to join the underground SACP and the underground SACP in 1961 and Umkhonto weSizwe in 1962. Through dedication and diligence, Comrade Chris patiently rose through the ranks of our movement and became a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC, Chief of the Staff of Umkhonto weSizwe, and General Secretary of the South African Communist Party, later in 1991. It is important to note that Comrade Chris was a veteran of the Luthuli detachment who fought gallantly and bravely during the Wanki Sipolilo campaign in Zimbabwe, which was a joint campaign of MK and ZAPU forces. He's one of the veterans who became the National Executive Committee member with a battle experience where he commanded his forces, encouraging them to attack the enemy. This was one of the major operations of MK, where MK, for the first time, came face to face with the enemy in real combat. He was part of the command structure during that campaign as a commissar, and where he distinguished himself in bravery. Comrade Chris was also instrumental in building forward structures of the ANC. He was deployed in Lesotho to strengthen the internal underground structures of the movement, a task which he performed with distinction. A very brave comrade. In his route to Lesotho, he had to go through South Africa as disguised somebody in order to get to Lesotho. There was no way to link Lesotho. It needed cadres of high caliber, specially prepared, and he was the leading comrade in Lesotho to all operations and underground activities in the country. While in Lesotho, after the enemy had noticed his presence and confirmed that he was there operating, he was a target of numerous assassination attacks from the apartheid regime until the ANC moved him to operate in Lusaka at the headquarters of the ANC and other forward areas. In all these instances, Comrade Chris proved without a doubt that he was a very courageous, fearless, and a brave comrade. During this time, Comrade Chris also served in various structures of the ANC and the MK, including being part of the Political Military Committee, PMC, as well as also being part of the ANC National Executive Committee. That committee, the PMC, was a committee below the National Executive Committee whose task was to execute the struggle inside the country. It was not dealing with international work. It was dealing with the operation inside the country, both political and military. He served in all important structures of the organization, including the senior organ, which was in charge of operating both the political and military aspects of our struggle, based in Maputo. Under the PMC, the Political Military Committee, in specific areas bordering South Africa, the ANC had established a structure called the senior organ. That were populated by the leading cadres as well as the members of the National Executive Committee. That's why he also served in that structure as well. Not just that structure, but also in the military committee under the senior organ. Senior organ had two committees for speciality: the military committee and the political committee. Later, Comrade Chris was appointed to be an MK Commissar and Chief of Staff. He was very popular among MK cadres. The reason for his popularity among rank and file of MK members is because he was an honest comrade. He was forthright. Therefore, MK combatants respected, loved, and trusted him. One of the strong qualities of Comrade Chris was the fact that he understood the alliance very well as a leader and member of MK, ANC, and the party. He saw no contradictions in the alliance and was a living embodiment of what it meant to have many heads and dual membership within the alliance. Because of his understanding of the role of these, he never used his leadership in both organizations to sow discord and disunity. He never used the party and the ANC to attack the other. He never abused one structure over the other. He had a deep understanding that all comrades who were leaders, some of them before him, had a deeper understanding of the relationship between the party and the ANC and the alliance. Comrade Chris did not regard his membership and leadership of the ANC as less important as compared to that of the party. He took his responsibilities very seriously in all structures and never confused the fundamental roles of the two. Thus, Comrade Chris we had in him an embodiment of the alliance as he belonged to the ANC and the South African Communist Party simultaneously. It's important to emphasize this point, comrades, if we are to learn any lesson from Chris, because we can't believe in him and do things that he would have criticized himself. It reminds us of the words of Comrade Oliver Tambo, our president, at the funeral of Comrade Moses Mabhida in Mozambique, acknowledging his leadership, Mabhida's leadership, of both the ANC and the SACP. He said, and I quote, "This combination of functions in one leader of our people upset our adversaries because it reflected the permanence and acceptability among our people of the idea and the practice of the unity of the revolutionary democratic, the socialist, and the trade union movements in the South African struggle for national liberation." Very complex thing for many to understand indeed. It was part of Comrade Mabhida's greatness, this is OR saying, that having quite early on understood the importance of the unity of these great movements, he succeeded in ably serving each one of them individually and all of them together as a collective front for national and social emancipation. Unquote. Very important for us to understand the alliance. Great leaders of our movement, many of them who have departed, had dual membership, some of them more than just 2 organizations. They had a particular way of handling the organizations. Some of them, when the party was underground, you would never know they were ever members of any party. Highly disciplined, as the party then emphasized the iron discipline. Indeed, Comrade Chris played all his roles effectively wherever he was deployed. As General Secretary of our vanguard party, Comrade Chris tirelessly endeavored to put the problems of the working class at the top of the national agenda. As a soldier, Commissar and Chief of Staff of our glorious army, MK, fearlessly and fiercely fought in combat against the oppressive and murderous apartheid regime for the liberation of his people. When he returned to the country from exile, Comrade Chris remained in touch with the people and knew their daily experiences and wishes. He knew and appreciated the aspirations of our people. He detested people who theorize about the people when they don't know what the people feel. He was a dedicated soldier for peace. And there is a lot that the younger generation should learn from him. Comrades, the apartheid murderers robbed us a cadre who was robust yet respectful, conscious of his stature. He humbled himself and forthrightly outspoken yet mindful of organizational boundaries. He knew what to say and how to say it and where to say it, while ensuring that the apartheid regime knew exactly what he thought of them at any given time. Because when he spoke in public, he knew exactly how to address these matters. Such revolutionary traits and, Comrade Chris, an eternal place in the hearts and minds of our people. It led President Nelson Mandela to say at his funeral, and I quote, "We worked together in the National Executive Committee of the ANC. We had glorious debates and an intense exchange of ideas. You were completely unafraid. No task was too small for you to perform. Your ready smile and warm friendship was a source of strength and companion. You lived in my home, and I loved you like the true son that you were." Unquote. Comrade Chris's role as MK Chief of Staff is by far one that endeared him to the youth of our country. He spoke their language, understood their anger and impatience. But he was also always able to deal with difficult situations and decisions that he did not agree with. One of these was the suspension of the armed struggle, which he believed was untimely. He didn't think it was wrong. He said it was untimely. But he had to defend it once it was taken by the organization. He said, as he defended this decision, and I quote, "In the current political situation, the decision by our organization to suspend armed actions is correct and is an important contribution in maintaining the momentum of negotiations," unquote. Now here is a very practical demonstration of discipline, of collective leadership that Comrade Chris exercised. Much as he had a view, he debated this within the ranks of the leadership. But once a decision was taken, he was the first, in fact, even ahead of those who were championing for this decision, to defend it, to comrades who were very apprehensive about this decision. Thus, he was able to rise above his disappointment and publicly defended a decision he had not agreed with. Once it was agreed, it was his decision. That's the teachings of the ANC. Comrades, we believe that our movement since Mangaung has begun to return to the basics and the values that many in Comrade Chris's generation lived by, that of the discipline of the collective. Once a decision is taken, all of us now spend our time focusing on how best to implement it for the good of the organization and then ultimately the good of the country. This is the overriding principle which guided our movement and alliance for the many years of unbroken unity. We will continue to build this unity and the discipline that our forebears knew and understood. It would be sheer opportunism to use the name of Comrade Chris to do anything contrary to the maximum unity of the alliance which he stood for. We are building an ANC that all South Africans will be proud of and want to associate with. We are building the ANC so that it captures the imagination of the youth, which makes up a huge majority in the population of our country. We want them to entrust their future to the ANC in the knowledge that what Comrade Chris and his contemporaries fought for will be achieved for the good of the current and future generations. I think in what Comrade Gungubele was saying when Chris disciplined him was important and instructive. That if you believe you have to rule this country, you cannot have an attitude towards the Christians. They are a majority in this country. Well, they've got to respect you, they've got to support you. So you can't be careless in behavior and utterances. You can't. Comrades, we owe Comrade Chris Hani and indeed to all our martyrs a debt that can only be repaid by the unwavering commitment and dedication to the betterment of our people's lives as displayed by our daily conduct. We must therefore accelerate the transformation of our society and free our people from the shackles of extreme poverty, unemployment, and inequality. We must hasten to usher in the type of society which Comrade Chris lived and died for. This means that for as long as there are children who go to bed hungry, young people who have no jobs and no education, women who are molested in their homes or in the streets, people who still yearn for water, electricity, sanitation, and decent homes, the struggle that Comrade Chris was waging is still continuing. In the lendlela esihambayo. While wanting to see change happening fast in every corner of our country,